So the prosecution in the Diddy case, they are winding up now, closing arguments tomorrow and Friday. The jury gets the case probably Monday. So the prosecution just filed paperwork today, actually in the form of a letter to the judge, saying that they wanted to simplify the jury instructions per the judge's instructions. And what they're doing is they're streamlining things. That there are charges alleging kidnapping, arson, that's the Kid Cudi case. They are alleging aiding and abetting in sex trafficking. They are slimming that all down.
Now to the defense, resting in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Combs chose not to take the stand, and our Dan Abrams and Shauna Lloyd are standing by to break down the case. But first, let's go back to Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky at the courthouse. Good morning again, Aaron.
And good morning again to you, Michael. After more than 6 weeks of testimony from 34 witnesses, the case against Sean Combs, charging him with racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking, is about to go to the jury. And whatever the 8 men and 4 women, all college-educated jurors, decide, they'll do it without hearing directly from Sean Combs. When the judge asked whether Combs was waiving his right to testify in his own defense, he stood and said, "That is totally my decision."
Welcome to Bopping Bob. We have a major update tonight on one of the year's most high-profile trials as the case against Sean Diddy Combs enters its final stages. After weeks of gripping testimony, dramatic revelations, and tense moments, we're now at the closing phase. Closing arguments are just around the corner, and soon the jury will take on the crucial task of delivering a verdict. With the stakes higher than ever and the July 4th holiday just ahead, the pressure is mounting in ways that could significantly impact the outcome of this trial. Stay with us as we break down everything you need to know about this explosive case, where the tension is reaching a fever pitch. Let's take a moment to reflect on how we've gotten to this point. This case has been a roller coaster from the very beginning, spanning more than a month of intense testimony. 34 witnesses have taken the stand, delivering emotional and sometimes shocking accounts. But now, we're nearing the end of KZN. This exhaustive trial. Diddy is facing serious charges, including racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking, all of which carry severe penalties. And as we've seen in trials like this, the outcome will have a ripple effect far beyond the courtroom, affecting his career, his reputation, and the future of his business empire. One of the most intriguing aspects of the trial has been the defense's decision not to put Diddy on the stand. Typically, in high-profile cases like this, the defense will have their client testify in order to humanize them to the jury. But Diddy's legal team decided to take a different route, one that signals they feel confident in their position and that the prosecution has not met its burden of proof. By not calling Diddy to the stand, the defense is eliminating the risk of cross-examination, which could potentially expose weaknesses in his testimony. Instead, they've chosen to focus solely on challenging the evidence presented by the prosecution. This bold strategy has left many wondering, can the prosecution build a solid case without hearing directly from the defendant? Another crucial development today is that the prosecution filed a request with the judge to streamline the jury instructions. Now, this might sound like an inside baseball detail, but it's actually very significant. The prosecution has asked the judge to simplify the charges for the jury, removing certain elements like attempted kidnapping or arson. Why? Well, the prosecution is confident that these crimes were fully carried out, and that mentioning the attempted versions would only confuse the jury. By focusing on the core elements of the charged sexual kidnapping and arson, they believe they can avoid overloading the jury with unnecessary legal details. This is important, especially in such a complex case where multiple charges are at play. While simplifying things might seem like a good idea in theory, we have to ask ourselves, is it enough? This case involves RICO charges, which are notoriously complex, sex trafficking allegations, and multiple underlying crimes. Can the jury keep track of all of this without being bogged down by too many legal nuances? And more importantly, will this help the prosecution seal the deal? As we head into a critical period of the trial, we must consider the looming July 4th holiday. We all know how important these long weekends can be for deliberating jurors, who may start to feel the pressure to reach a verdict quickly. With closing Arguments set for Thursday and Friday. The jury will likely begin deliberations shortly after that. But with the holiday just around the corner, will they be able to reach a decision before the weekend? Imagine this. The jury is faced with the task of deciding whether Diddy is guilty of some of the most serious charges imaginable. But they also know that if they don't come to a decision by Friday, they'll have to come back on Monday after the holiday and pick up where they left off. This introduces a very real pressure to reach a consensus before the holiday break. Will this pressure lead to quicker decision-making? It's possible. Historically, there's a phenomenon in many high-stakes trials where jurors feel the need to resolve the case quickly, especially when a long holiday weekend is looming. The desire to enjoy their time off can sometimes drive jurors toward compromise in order to avoid being called back into court after the break. It's a strange dynamic, but one that is not unheard of. Now, let's take a deeper look at the prosecution's strategy. The prosecution's main focus has been on proving that Diddy was part of a criminal enterprise, a racketeering operation that involved everything from sex trafficking to prostitution. To do this, they've used a combination of financial evidence, witness testimonies, and even explicit footage. This strategy is meant to show that Diddy was not just a passive observer, but an active participant in the crimes at hand. One of the most critical pieces of evidence that has been presented is the financial transactions, showing that money was moving in connection to sex trafficking, bank records, testimony about the movement of money across state lines, and witness accounts have all painted a picture of a man at the center of an illegal operation. This isn't just about allegations, it's about showing that Diddy benefited from these crimes financially. In addition, prosecution has introduced explicit footage that involves two women, Kazi Ventura and Jane Doe, in sexual situations with male escorts. These pieces of evidence are meant to highlight the nature of the charges against Diddy, particularly the sex trafficking claims. But as compelling as these elements may be, proving a RICO charge is never easy. RICO requires showing a pattern of illegal activities, and the prosecution must convince the jury that Diddy was orchestrating the crimes. Can they connect all the dots? Or will the defense's arguments leave reasonable doubt in the jury's mind? On the flip side, the defense has stuck to their guns in saying that the prosecution has not proven its case. By not putting Diddy on the stand, they've avoided the risk of cross-examination, instead choosing to attack the prosecution's evidence and narrative. The core of the defense's argument is that Diddy didn't orchestrate or benefit from the crimes. The defense argues that the women involved in the case were in long-term relationships with Diddy and could have left at any time. They argue that these were not acts of coercion or trafficking. They were consensual interactions between adults. This is a direct challenge to the prosecution's claims of manipulation and control. The defense has also leaned heavily on the concept of reasonable doubt. They've pointed out inconsistencies in witness testimony and argued that the charges, especially racketeering and sex trafficking, are based on circumstantial evidence rather than concrete facts. Their goal is simple: to convince the jury that the prosecution hasn't proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So, what's next? After days of closing arguments, the jury will begin deliberating. The stakes are incredibly high, as they must weigh each charge carefully. With 5 charges to consider, it's entirely possible that the jury could find Diddy guilty of some charges but not others. The question remains: will the jury be able to reach a unanimous decision? Or will they become deadlocked on certain charges, leading to a hung jury? Given the complexity of the case, a split verdict is a real possibility. The jury's job is never easy. But in this case, it's even more difficult. With so many charges and so much evidence to sift through, it's very likely that we will see a split verdict. Some jurors might find the prosecution's case convincing on 1 or 2 charges, while others may not be so sure. In cases involving complicated charges like RICO and sex trafficking, the potential for a hung jury increases. Moreover, we must consider how the holiday weekend could affect deliberations. If the jury feels pressure to come to a decision quickly, they may be more inclined to push for a consensus even if it means compromising on some of the charges. This dynamic is something to watch closely in the coming days. At the end of the day, what's at stake for Diddy is monumental. Convicted, he could face years, possibly decades in prison for charges like racketeering and sex trafficking. These are serious offenses with serious consequences. And the implications for Diddy's life and career would be profound, even if he's acquitted. The damage to his reputation may be irreparable. Public perception of him as a successful businessman and cultural icon has already been tarnished by the allegations, and no matter the verdict, the case has already taken a toll. Ultimately, the jury's decision will shape the next chapter of Diddy's life. Will he face a future behind bars, or will he walk away from this trial a free man with his career intact?